Let's move on to the group member specific segment. We're going to be talking about the joys of resource management as if we haven't already. We've kind of been talking about that.
Yeah.
Elder, this is your favorite thing.
Yes.
In games.
Yep.
If there was one thing that all of your favorite games or most of your favorite games have in common, it is this resource management. What is the attraction to you? What is the big deal?
Again, I think probably a lot of it comes from this game and similar games to it. But I think there's something about that, accumulating of stuff, of resources, and having a variety of that to play around with in the game, and to use that for different things to get victory points. I like, I don't know if I would say I'm necessarily a fan of point salad per se. I kind of feel like that terminology.
I think you kind of are a little bit, though. I mean, you like Steffenfeld more than most of us do.
Yes, this is
true.
So
I like Steffenfeld a lot. I don't have any problem with him, but I think you're more of his banner man than we are.
Yes, and I think it's more. I think it's kind of gotten. I kind of feel like that term is a little derogatory, and that the game is it maybe means to people that it's not as focused, or that it's not as tight a design because there's just all these little ways to get points.
Yeah, not as trackable.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Yeah,
it's not as tight a design. I just
it definitely could be more multiplayer solitaire.
It could be
sometimes, right? Because if I could be off here doing C, D, and E, and you're doing A, B, and X, right? Then we're not having a lot of interaction.
Yeah.
So I understand that. That makes sense.
Yeah. But I think I just like the idea of having a choice about how to score points and being able to score points in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
Which is something that, again, Aura offers, tremendously. And, games that are similar to that. And I think, I don't know, there's just something about having a bunch of, like, I remember, I think I had an inkling that this was like kind of one of my big things in games before, but I just remember specifically there was a game called Altiplano that came out.
Altiplano, absolutely, yeah. But the thinking man's bag builder.
Yes, exactly, right. And when I looked at that game, I was maybe I downloaded the rules PDF, or I looked at some pictures on the Geek or whatever, and I saw that this game has 16 resources, and I'm like, I'm in. I'm in. I'm like, I just love that, and I think that's really when it hit me that like that's really like a thing for me is like, and again, a game could I can't think of one right now anyway where there's a game that has a bunch of resources and it's just a bad game, right? Like I'm sure that's easy to happen, right?
Oh yeah, no, I could probably name a bunch of them, but it's not. They're just games we would never consider playing.
Right, exactly, right. But when you can pull it off, right? When you can make a really great game design that has a bunch of resources, and I think also, again, I wouldn't call myself because there's crafting involved too, right? So it's not just having 16 different resources that in and of themselves can be used for different things. It's this idea of, well, if I take this resource and this resource and combine it with these other ones, then I can make something else that's more valuable.
Okay, so you're being very specific about resource management.
Yes.
You're talking about a very specific part of that because resource management is a larger umbrella term.
Yes.
Power Grid.
Yeah.
Is a resource management game.
Yes.
I want to power these cities. I have built these things, but in order to do that, I've got power plants that are going to need fuel.
Yes.
And there is a market out there. And there are 4 different types of resources. And they are starting at different prices, and they have different scarcity at the moment. And I can buy a different plant to switch the kind of resource that I am trying to gather. And I have to figure the price point on that, right? To me, even though I don't really play Power Grid anymore, I've always loved that system, even though it's only 4 resources, right?
Sure.
It's just, or 5. It's a very small number of resources, but it creates a tremendously robust economic and market system with just those. Bonanza I talked about. Let me talk about Bonanza for a second. This is a card game in which we are bean planters.
Right.
We are planting beans. We have a hand of cards that are shuffled up, huge deck of cards, and there are blue beans and pinto beans and this bean and that bean and all these different kinds of beans. And they are going to score points based on their scarcity. So if there are 22 of that bean in the deck, you're going to need to put down 6 of those beans before that bean field can be harvested for a coin.
Mm-hmm.
If you harvest 9 of them, it's worth 2 coins, and so on and so forth, right? Whereas if you have one of the beans that is very rare, and there's only 7 of these in the whole deck, then just 2 beans in that field, and you're going to be able to harvest that for 1 coin, and so on and so forth. Okay. The trick to the game is that your cards cannot change order. Right. The card on the leftmost card in your hand when you fan those cards out is the next card that you must play. And you can only have 2 working bean fields at any given time. So I have 4 of one kind of bean in one of my fields, and the other one I've got 6. And they're so close to getting that second coin or that first coin. But the first bean in my hand is the wrong type of bean. It's neither of those other 2. And if I don't trade this with somebody else, if I don't get somebody to take this somehow, I'm going to have to uproot one of those 2 fields and plant this stupid bean that I don't want to have in the first place. In some ways, you could say that is one of the most stripped down resource management games that you've ever heard of, because the only difference between any of these things is how many of those cards are in the deck.
Right.
And because of that, the math of how many of you have to score points, but it creates the situation where I've never played a trading game where trading was more fierce, more frenetic, and more like I'm giving people everything just so they take the thing I don't want to have because I can't change the order of things. To me, it doesn't really fit in your definition, but that's a resource management game that I love when I think of resource management. Do those sorts of things fire you up too, or is it mostly crafting the key for you?
Again, I think it's and again, resource management is pretty broad, and again, I think it's very interesting that again, you can't find it specifically as a search topic on the Geek.
It's
right?
really
and
weird.
But when you look in individual games, it's there.
Oh yeah,
right. As an aspect or an element. Again, I think there's something I can't quite put my finger on it, but I think there's just something about having, again, like a bunch of different resources, and it seems like 16 to 20 seems like a really interesting number to me in a game space. That can be used for different things, and there's different, you have to take different actions to get them or build them, and that you can combine them, and there's just something about that, and there's a whole nother aspect of resource management, which is I think what you're talking about, which is the value of the resources, so you can get into kind of like a stock market, which I think is very interesting too. And then there's I think specifically the management of the resources, like basically how you're kind of controlling the resources that you have versus the resources that are in the game and versus the resources that other players have.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? Like, there's a if I have a certain resource, if I just have more than you, then that's somehow advancing me in the game because it gives me more points or allows me to do something else. Maybe if I have more of something than anybody else, maybe there's an action or something that I can take that nobody else can take because I have the most of. Or a lot of times in games, that's a victory condition, right?
Sure.
If you have the most of something, then you get a certain amount of points.
Yeah, I mean, or LABORA is a great example that there are resources in that game that are primarily building resources.
Yes.
You were getting those to get the cards that will allow you to do more things. Then there are the resources that are the trading resources or the crafting resources. That you're getting that resource to make that into a different resource. And then you're going to use those resources to make it into a different resource. And each time you're upping the inherent value of what those things are. Sometimes you're taking 8 of something and making 4 of something else, but those 4 of something else are inherently significantly more valuable. which is interesting. What I love is when there isn't that dichotomy, and sometimes in LABORA that happens, where I have to make a hard choice between using this resource to build something or saving this resource in order to upgrade it into the more valuable things.
Sure.
I like games that do that. I'm just going to tell you, Terraforming Mars, which you have already slandered on this broadcast, is a resource management game.
I know.
You start with 8 different resources at various levels that you generate. They can be used in a variety of different ways and different combinations. In addition, you have the tags on every single card you play. That is another 8 to 10 to 12 resources that you are managing in the game that you are literally... You need 3 science tags in order to play this card that is key to your strategy. That is the very same thing as I need to get 3 more wood in order to build this building. It is the same thing.
Yeah, I think part of what happened with me and this has happened with other games, is that again, like, the learning curve, right?
Yeah.
Like, again, I wanted to make sure I got a certain other place on Mars. I didn't want to get left behind because Terraforming Mars, by the time I got into that one, boy, like, people had already, really, like...
Well, I don't know if you've played it with our group in a while, because...
I don't think I ever played it with the Game Brain group.
Dude, you should play with the Game Brainers, because the fact of the matter is that we...
With you, Sharks?
We play so many different things. We're not, we're not playing 30 games of Terraforming Mars in a month.
And that's who I played it with, people who were playing it. I think they had like 10, 20 plays. They already knew all the cards. They already had the metas worked out.
I could name the people right now. I'm not going to do it, but I could name the people that you played with, and they will suck the fun out of a lot of things because they do that. But the sad thing is that you're the binge gamer. You do that same thing too. You have the exact same tendencies.
I know it.
Right? Whereas us, we try to be good at a lot of things, but we don't have the time to play one game 20 times because we have a lot of other things to play and a lot of other interests. I don't know. Breadth versus depth, maybe.
Yeah.
Let me talk about a couple other games and get your gut on that.
Sure.
Have you played Keyflower?
I have played Keyflower.
What do you think about that? Because it's a very interesting resource management game because you have wood and stone and these sorts of things that you're getting, and they're very hard to get. They're very hard to put where you need to put. You have those tiles that are the the saws and the woodcutters and those sorts of things. But then you also have the men themselves are your bidding mechanism.
Yeah.
But they're also what activates buildings.
Yep.
And they're actually a resource that you are either generating or losing on a constant basis.
Yeah.
I just think as a resource management game, it's a really fascinating example to me of that. It's far less than your 16 to 20 resources that you could do different things with. But to me, because the pieces that you use to get resources is itself a resource, is a really, really interesting wrinkle that makes the permutations of that fascinating.
Yeah. Well, what I get from your question, so I really appreciate the design of Keyflower. I've played it again recently. I think I don't like my resource management games too tight. And I feel like Keyflower is too tight.
Keyflower is very tight. That's true.
I feel like you just you never have enough meeples, right? It's so difficult to, trigger your buildings and move the resources around.
Yeah, it really is.
It's just super tight, and I don't think I like that.
So let me put it in a different way and see if you agree with this.
Sure.
You prefer a puzzle of possibilities, as opposed to a puzzle of finding a solution to something that seems impossible.
Well,
do you know what I mean by that?
It's I wouldn't word exactly that way, but yes, right. I would say more about it's not a matter of the latter way you described it, but that is too difficult, or that it. And again, sometimes I do
solving scarcity maybe is the way to put it.
Like in Barrage, right?
Yes.
I think Barrage is a great game. I don't know if I enjoy Barrage, right? But I enjoy the kind of tightness and frustration of it the few times that I've played. I only have a few plays under my belt, but I think it's a really interesting design, and again, it's resource management. It's got that interesting wheel, and it's too tight, which again normally I don't go for.
Yep.
But in that particular permutation of it, it kind of works for me.
Okay.
At least enough where I want to play it some more.
Gotcha.
But I think typically I definitely like the more open space where resources are easier to get, and it's not nearly so tight, and it's really more about, how can I best manage these resources versus the other players? How can I maximize on victory points with all the different choices and all the different resources that I have?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So then my last thing, my two favorite resource games are Roads and Boats and Antiquity.
Okay, which I haven't played either one. I know these are classics. I have not played them.
Oh, because I'm trying to figure out where you're going to fall on that. I think you may not like them that much.
Yeah.
Because they are, it's a little bit of both. They are sandboxy.
Sure.
Which you would like.
Right.
Because I have here's a list of 30 different buildings I can build. Here's 10 things I can build with one wood. Here's 8 things I can build with one stone. Here's the 3 amazing things that I can build with only 2 stone. So boom, just generate that and build these things. It's amazing. But the games are punishing.
Yeah.
They are punishing. In Roads and Boats, you're using resources to create buildings that create other resources, which is classic, right?
Sure.
But the trick is you don't own any of it. So anybody can come by and pick up anything that is sitting there. If it's not on one of your transport vehicles, if it's not sitting on a donkey or on a cart or on a raft that you own,
right,
you don't own any of that.
Yeah.
So the logistics of that are maddening. And then in Antiquity, it's even worse. You're using resources to create buildings that create resources, but everything is dying constantly. Everything you're doing is creating pollution. Everything you pollute is creating a famine.
Wow.
So the city is filling up with graves.
Yeah.
And eventually those graves are going to stop your buildings from working.
Yeah.
Your countryside that you're going to try and be harvesting, things out of is filling up with pollution. It's just being polluted utterly. I have a feeling that you might not love it, but I need to see you play this. I need to introduce you to. We need to play these games just to see what you think, because they are a very, very different. Splatter, right? They take something that I know what this game is like, and you play like I have no idea what this game is. I have no idea. Yeah. What are your favorite resource management games?
Well, besides Aura, my other UI game, Glass Road. Which I've played a ton of times. Another reason why I like Glass Road so much, I guess this is a kind of sommelier suggestion, is it plays so great in an hour. So it's like great, it's a very, like, I wouldn't categorize it as a filler, but it's like when you only got an hour left in your game night.
It felt a little too open for me, so maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's because it was over so quickly.
Yeah. It does end abruptly, but that's an interesting one where in the rules he says that you can actually add more rounds to it. Like you can play it's only 4 rounds, but you can do a 5th or 6th. Like he said, that's totally fine, which makes the game very different. Because it's one of those games again where I hear complain a lot about Glass Road is like once you get your engine up and running, then the game's over.
Which may be why it ends in 4 rounds.
Right, exactly.
But when you have you played it? Have you played 6 round?
I have played it before, and it's better at 4. It's a better game at 4, I think. But it's interesting to do like a 5 or 6 every now and then of Glass Road. So that's one. We talked about Clans of Caledonia, which I definitely want to play some more. I just think that's a very interesting resource management in terms of setting things up. And so this was the aspect of resource management we didn't talk about is income, right?
Oh, yeah.
So setting things up so that every round you're getting more of them.
You know what? We haven't reviewed that Clans of Caledonia yet.
Ooh.
That might be your next review with me.
Sure.
I would love to
Get it back on the table.
Just get an excuse to play that more.
Sure.
And by the way, I also am dying to review Antiquity and Roads and Boats. But we'll figure that out. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What else?
Yeah.
Anything else? Is there anything that is there any hidden gem? I think Glass Road actually counts as a hidden gem. Is there any other resource management game that a lot of people may not have essayed?
Oh, New Amsterdam. Have you ever played that?
Wow. You know what? Not New England, New Amsterdam. No,
Yes.
I've never played New Amsterdam.
Oh man, you got to play New Amsterdam.
Is that right?
Yeah, New Amsterdam. So there's a bit of a controversial theme because it's the beginning of New York, the building of New York.
Sure.
Right. And the Native Americans are there. And there's a mechanic in the game where you're basically like you're not colonizers. You're building up industry in New York, but you're trading with the Native Americans.
Oh, no.
And as you're they're on a river, and as you're trading with them, you're basically clearing them out, right, and taking their land.
I was like wondering, why haven't I heard of this game? I'm like, oh, that's why. Okay.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, but the way it's handled mechanically in the game is a very interesting mechanism. And again, in terms of resource management, one of the reasons why I like it so much is because every resource, there's a what is it? There's an auction bidding. So that's another aspect we didn't talk about. So resource management in terms of bidding, right?
Yes.
So as opposed to the game is determining, or something in a game state is determining how much each one of your resources is worth. All the resources in New Amsterdam are worth exactly one. The money, the wood, the goods, everything can be boiled down to one in terms of bidding. Corn, which you need to feed your people. Mm-hmm. It's a relatively tight, not super tight game, but yeah, like having that bidding mechanic and being able to use everything to and what you're bidding on is basically the actions that you can take and your turn order, which is super important in the game as well. So yeah, I would categorize that as a hidden gem. I think I just pulled it out of storage actually. And also Madeira, which we got to get on the table again too. Like
I love Madeira. I do. We've literally had people talking about that very, very recently in our Discord channel. So we're gonna have to get that. So New Amsterdam, 2012. Interesting. Jeffrey D. Allers. I want you to bring this. I want you to bring this, and I want to check that out.
Yeah.
Elder, thank you so much. That's amazing. What else? Anything?
There's one other aspect about that one, New Amsterdam, where you're you're collecting furs, different types of furs, right? And those can have different values, and then you're sending those back to the old world and getting goods, which again are worth different either money or victory points in the game. Yeah. So there's a lot of like interesting conversion things that happen, and yeah, it's fun.
Elder, thanks so much. That was really great.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I love when somebody teaches me about a game I never even knew existed, and New Amsterdam definitely fits that bill. Now that I look at the cover, I'm like, oh, I remember seeing that game. Had no idea that it was this hidden gem. Yep. Looking forward to checking that out. If everybody out there, if you guys like resource management games, maybe start telling BGG that there should be some way of selecting that, some way of searching games through that. It may be that it's just too broad a term.
Sure.
But when I look at the specific mechanisms, it would be nice if there was. It's almost as though there should be a subset that is resource management, auction, resource management, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Hey, if you enjoyed that video, you very well might enjoy the other videos you now see being suggested to you on screen. Also, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could like, share, or subscribe to our Game Brain channel. Thanks so much.